the ticket nobody meant to sell. Somewhere in Washington, D.C. right now, there is a ticket stub sitting on a nightstand or a QR code buried in someone's phone that is worth more than the person who bought it ever imagined. It was purchased weeks ago, priced for a completely different tournament than the one that actually happened. And by the time the final point was played, it had turned into the single hottest piece of paper in American tennis this year. Here's the strange part. The person responsible for that isn't a name that was on any poster, any broadcast graphic, or any pre-tournament preview. She was ranked outside the top 25 when the gates opened. Unseeded. Barely a footnote in the tournament program. And by the time she walked off the court for the very last time, she had beaten 4 seeded players in a row, including a former world number 1, to win the biggest title of her career, and completely rewritten what an American tennis tournament thought it had sold tickets to. So how does a 21-year-old who wasn't supposed to be the story become the only story anyone in Washington was talking about? Stick around, because the way this actually unfolded is stranger and more dramatic than anything a marketing department could have planned. Before we get into it, if you're into stories where the sport itself gets upended by someone nobody saw coming, go ahead and subscribe now, because there is a lot more of this coming. Let's rebuild this from the beginning, because you need to understand exactly how confident everyone was before any of this happened. The Mubadala DC Open is one of the biggest tennis events in the United States outside the 4 Grand Slams. Tournament chairman Mark Ein spent the weeks before the event talking it up as a marquee week for Washington tennis, built around a field stacked with major champions and former DC winners. Multiple outlets reported the tournament was sitting close to a sellout well before a single ball was struck. On the women's side, the marketing hierarchy was clear. Elina Svitolina, a former top 5 player and world number 10, was seeded second and treated as one of the faces of the week. 4-time Grand Slam champion Naomi Osaka was in the draw as the 3rd seed. Jessica Pegula, ranked among the very best players in the world, came in as the top seed. And Leylah Fernandez, last year's DC Open champion, had her face on the promotional material as the defending title holder. Notice who is missing from that list. Alexandra Eala, 21 years old, from the Philippines, sitting at a career-high ranking she had only reached a couple of weeks earlier. She had no seeding in this draw. She was not who the tournament was built around. She was, at best, a name casual fans might have half recognized from a big scalp she'd picked up earlier in the season. That's the setup. Now here's where it starts to come apart. Round 1, Eala draws Zhang Qinwen, a dangerous, powerful ball striker. It is not a soft draw. Eala loses ground early, has to dig out of trouble, and claws her way through it to survive into the second round. That win alone barely registers outside hardcore tennis circles. It's what happens next that starts the avalanche. Round 2 puts her directly across the net from Leylah Fernandez, the defending champion, the player whose image was still hanging on banners around the grounds as the face of the tournament's return champion storyline. Eala beats her. One of the tournament's central marketing pillars is gone, and almost nobody outside the sport notices yet, because this still looks like an upset, not a pattern. Then comes the quarterfinal, and this is where the story stops being an upset and starts being something else entirely. Waiting for her is Elina Svitolina, the number 2 seed, a former top 5 player with a Wimbledon semifinal and an Olympic bronze medal on her resume. On paper, this should be the moment the bracket corrects itself. Instead, Eala wins in straight sets, and it's not particularly close. It's the same story that had already happened once before, on grass in Berlin about 5 weeks earlier, Eala beating Svitolina with an almost identical scoreline. Different city, different surface, same outcome. That's not luck twice. That's a matchup Eala has genuinely solved. Svitolina herself, before the Washington rematch, told the WTA she knew it wouldn't be easy going in. A top 10 player publicly bracing herself for a player ranked nearly 20 spots below her. That's what it looks like when the player on the other side of the net already knows what's coming. By Friday night, 3 of the tournament's headline names are gone from the draw, and none of them lost to each other. They all lost to the same person. That's the moment the tournament's own ticket inventory started tightening in real time. Reports out of the Philippines and the tournament's own promotional channels confirmed that seats for the semifinals and final were essentially gone. Not because the tournament ran a brilliant late marketing push. because word had spread that something unplanned was happening on that court, and people wanted to see it in person. Now the semi-final. Naomi Osaka, the four-time major champion, the third seed, a player who has been ranked world number 1 and remains one of the most recognizable athletes in the sport. This was the first time these two had ever played each other. Osaka had just survived a brutal 3-set fight of her own to get there. If there was ever a moment for the bracket to reset itself, for the run to hit its ceiling, this was supposed to be it. It wasn't. Eala took the first set by working her way back from an early break, then completely took over the second, closing it out in straight sets to reach her first ever WTA 500 final. Osaka, gracious afterward, admitted the match had felt more like a grind than a clean tennis contest. Eala, for her part, said she'd gone in knowing you can never count someone like Osaka out, and that she made a point of staying locked in from the very first point. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was dominating. Think about what that means for a second. In the space of 5 days, an unseeded 21-year-old beat the defending champion, a former top 5 player for the second time in 5 weeks, and a 4-time Grand Slam champion, without dropping a set to any of them in the deciding matches. That's not a hot streak. That's someone playing a different level of tennis than the ranking next to her name suggested. Waiting in the final was Jessica Pegula, the tournament's top seed, ranked among the best players alive. Pegula had her own tough road to get there, grinding past a former finalist and then surviving a tight semifinal against Diana Schneider. This was a rematch of sorts. The two had met once before, at the Miami Open the year prior, where Pegula ended what had been a breakout run for Eala in a brutal 3-set battle. Eala said going in that she trusted she was in the final for a reason, and that she expected a genuinely tough match. She was right on both counts. Here's where the story adds one more twist, because the tennis gods weren't finished. Pegula came out sharp and took the first set. Eala answered by grabbing an early lead in the second, and then the sky opened up. Thunderstorms rolled into Washington and suspended the match for hours, eventually pushing the rest of the final all the way to the following day. Imagine sitting on a 1-set deficit, in the biggest match of your career, and having to walk away from the court not knowing when you'll get to finish it. When play finally resumed, Eala came back a different competitor. She leveled the second set, forced a decider, and then something happened that nobody in that stadium was prepared for. She didn't just win the third set, she dismantled it. 6 games to love. Pegula, the world number 3, the top seed of the entire tournament, simply had no answer once Eala found her rhythm again. The final score, 4-6, 6-4, 6-love. Sit with that for a second. An unseeded 21-year-old walked into the biggest hardcourt tournament of her career, faced the defending champion, a former top 5 player twice, a 4-time Grand Slam champion, and the tournament's top seed, and beat every single one of them. She didn't just make a run. She beat literally every seed placed in front of her on her way to the trophy. That is her first WTA-level singles title, her first at the WTA 500 tier, and it comes with real consequences. It guarantees her a debut inside the world's top 20 and puts her firmly in position to be seated at a Grand Slam for the first time in her career when the US Open swing arrives just weeks later. There's a bigger picture worth sitting with here too, beyond just one incredible week of tennis. The Philippines has never hosted a top-tier professional tennis event. The sport barely reaches that part of the world through the tour calendar at all. And yet a wave of support poured into Washington, D.C. this week specifically because of one player, turning a midsummer American tennis stop into something that looked and sounded like a home game for a country that doesn't have one. That's not just a great sports story. That's a live look at what happens when a global sport finds an audience it didn't know it had. All because one player kept winning matches nobody expected her to win. Because here's the thing that makes this whole run even more remarkable. It almost didn't happen at all. 3 weeks earlier, at Wimbledon, Eala had her deepest Grand Slam run of her career ended in the 4th round. She flew from London to Washington with barely any time to reset, and then very nearly went out in the very first round, having to fight back from behind just to survive that opening match. If any one of those early moments had gone the other way, if that first-round comeback doesn't happen, if 1 point bounces differently against Fernandez, against Svitolina, against Osaka, none of what came after exists. No sold-out semifinal. No rain-delayed final. No trophy. The entire story hinges on a handful of points that could have gone either way and simply didn't. So here's where it actually lands. A tournament built its entire promotional plan around 4 established stars, sold itself out on the strength of that plan, and then watched a player who wasn't part of the plan at all walk through every single one of them and take the trophy home. Mark Ine said before the tournament that it was going to be an incredible summer week of tennis in Washington. He wasn't wrong. He just had no idea it would arrive from a direction nobody on his marketing team ever drew up. The next stop on the calendar is the North American hardcourt swing heading straight into the US Open, and for the first time in her career, Alexandra Eala walks into it not as an underdog trying to sneak up on someone, but as a player every single opponent left in the draw now has to prepare for. The seat she earned in Washington, she's not giving back. If you want more of these deep dives into the moments where sports plans fall apart in the best possible way, subscribe and stick around, because stories like this one are exactly what this channel is built for.